emotions had an echo in so much space. When you're out there without me, yeah, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know enough. Just too much. Does that make me crazy? Baby, I'm crazy. Probably. And I hope that you're having the time of your life. Think twice. It's my only advice. Bless your soul. Think you're in control. But I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. Probably. I don't want to do the same ones all the time. Alright.
Hello? Hello? Can you please find your seats? We're about to start. 30 seconds. Great. Well, welcome everybody. And also a very warm welcome to all of those who are here for the first time. My name is David, and I am one of the members here at Lansdowne Church. But I also work for Moet, which is a charity that partners with Christian unions across the UK and Europe. And we put on events like this to help people explore the big questions about life and faith.
Hello, so I'm Knarik from Armenia, so I'm here for a couple of days for the weekend. Again, I work with Christian unions back in Armenia, and it's such a privilege to welcome you here tonight. Before we start, I would love to make some notices. So if you haven't got the emails about the latest changes of the church, we have hard copies near the welcome point. You can grab them as you go. Yeah.
Great. And if you haven't picked this one up, the new Lansdowne Live magazine for July and August is out, and is waiting for you at the back in the refreshments room. Also, there's the remembrance book about Dr. Jones. So if you want to say something about him or how he's impacted your life, please do so and write it on the red books at the welcome point as well.
Yeah, so welcome again to More Than Fun in the Sun. Tonight we are going to discuss the question, can we find lasting happiness?
Yeah, but before we start, we thought it would have been fun if, with the person next to you, you discuss what is your ideal holiday destination. So you have 2 minutes, go for it.
There is so much excitement going on. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, if you want to speak more about this, you can do that in the end near the coffee. And I really hope that all of your dreams about the ideal holiday will come true. And now, I want to welcome Eliza, who will be my speaker of the event.
Give him a round of applause, please.
Thank you. So, Eliza, can you please tell us who you are and what you are doing?
Yes, please. So, hi everyone, it's good to be here tonight, I'm very excited. So, I'm Elisa, I'm from Switzerland, in Lausanne, French-speaking place in Switzerland. I'm part-time a student, so I'm doing a master's degree in psychology, and part-time I'm working for students, so preparing conferences. So basically I'm kind of working for myself, because I'm a student and I work for students, so yeah.
Thank you.
Right. So, Elisa, where is your favorite holiday destination?
Well, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have probably answered it would be France, the south of France. It's very common for Swiss people to go there. But actually, I lived a year here in England, and I think Bournemouth is pretty good. And
yeah, we love Bournemouth. Yeah, what the... Thank you very much, Elisa. You can grab a seat. Now we're going to have Joe. Joe is also my colleague, and we've traveled together to different countries and visiting different universities. And he's now going to perform a little piece to help us think about a little bit more about the question tonight: where can lasting happiness be found? Joe.
People do weird things to be happy. Sometimes those things are unpredictable. My dad once painted some grey hairs purple, 4 or 5 each side, coloured them in his beard. True story. He said it helped hide his age, but it just looked like he'd slapped himself with a beetroot. They stuck out from grey rough like Tinky Winkies waving from a Teletubby land filmed in a thunderstorm with no baby son. I waved back, but hairs don't wave, so they ignored me. And as Dad slowly opened his mouth to explain, I wasn't listening, because when Dad's beardy jaw gaped, half his face looked like Dumbledore's grey stained in Ribena, and I found it distracting. But it made him happy. And people do weird things to be happy-ish. Happy-ish. See, it had to be happy-ish, because that purple only papered over pretty aging cracks, and the paint came off with a wash to show grey. Still, grey. I liked grey, anyway. Dad didn't. But this purple didn't keep and last. It masked. He was only happy-ish. A guy called Wallace once tried to get at why. In a poem on what we miss, he settled for this: but in contentment, I still feel the need for an imperishable bliss. Instead, happy-ish settles it at second best. Happy-ish paints grey hairs purple, chases temporary fixes. Happy-ish is all the deadened, superficial charm of a holiday at Butlins. Happy-ish is building a fake reef for surfing without waves before finding out it doesn't really do waves, and so settling instead for snorkeling. Happy-ish will wait, waiting around for happiness to arrive, gritting teeth and getting by, kidding its bearer that one day they'll feel alive, like waiting for that drop in that party song to land, but it never does. You hear the charged stacks of synthy near heaven rise and build and tear away topwards to reach a prized sweet spot that's never delivered, a drop that never comes. See, we not only want bliss that lasts longer but goes deeper. Something more than the spikes of pleasure wrapped with the pangs in our gut that kick for them to last forever, but a bliss that drops us in free fall. And here's the thing. People do weird things to be happy, but happy does weird things to people. See, when we suddenly meet happy, like proper happy, we only know happy-ish. It's like that awkward middle ground where you feel kind of happy but kind of feel sheepish because you're never really sure what you're meant to do with it. Happy's those glimpses of beauty that seem too good to be true. The warmth of a best friend's laugh that hugs us. A picture that wows and moves and breaks us. The shy shimmer of an evening sun's gaze that simply stuns us. And in that moment, when you're there, it's like you're caught between heaven and the back of your head. Something so pretty that it's weighed down with a slight disconnect, like your words are left wanting and head and heart can't take it in, and you can't quite picture the play area for perfection to play in. But what if these are pretty pictures of a pretty true longing? Once upon a time, one man came to say, "I have come that you may have life in all its fullness." Not just wading wild in shallow waters, but drinking an ocean beyond the bay. He stands there, sunk in those distant waves, somehow even closer than a hair's breadth away, and yet as he stands, as he lives, he stands as the spot that all the maps mark as an X. What if this is the master we truly crave? If happy-ish will never make that cut, what if happy happy's the taste of a treasure that will one day stay?
Thank you, Joe. Well, first I have to say sorry for my accent, sorry if I make English mistakes. No longer that this morning my accent and my pronunciation put me in trouble because I tried to explain to some guys how great it was in Switzerland because we have a bear like the animal, but instead I say a bird, like bird, okay? So this guy was trying to understand why for 10 minutes I was saying that how great it was to have a bird in Switzerland. We had one big bird that everyone was afraid of and that we had everything arranged because of this bird. Actually, it was the bear, too. I hope my accent won't be a problem tonight. As Joy said, we all search for happiness, and we do weird things to find happiness. One thing I've noticed is that we write the name of happiness in many different places, as if it could call happiness upon our lives. We write happiness on birthday cards, on our Facebook wall, on our wall as a decoration. We write it on the product we sell. And actually, I saw it even written here in French, on a nice sheet of paper, framed and hung on a wall. In French, how desperate is that? Trust me, it's not gonna work simply because the French are no happier than us. And I think they make sure that we know about it. We used to say in Switzerland that the French are complaining a lot, but I guess you don't say that because you are kind and nice. Anyway, so to some of us it could sound ironic to give a talk on happiness in church, because sometimes the Christians don't seem to be the happiest person on the planet. Well, for myself, I grew up thinking that because I'm a Christian, I must be driven by duty, only by duty, that pleasure, fun, and enjoyment will be drifting me away from God. So I was considering any kind of this activity as useless. So when I was 14 years old, I even pledged myself I will never watch television again. What a waste of time. At that time, I thought that was the very Christian thing to do. Go to church, read the Bible, support my friends, study hard to get a degree, and nothing else. Well, actually, this is absolutely not a Christian way of living without happiness. And it's not a suitable way of living. Well, my friends here in Lansdowne tried to convince me of that 3 years ago when I was living here. And they partly convinced me, but sadly, after 9 months after I left England, I was convinced not only by mere words, but by experience. I worked too much, and I finished in burnout. I got depressed, in despair. I had suicidal thoughts. And I came to the conclusion of this absurd irony. On one hand, I wanted everyone to be a Christian, and on the other hand, I wished to no one to have my kind of Christian life without happiness. This way of living without happiness is not sustainable, but actually it is absolutely not Christian. C.S. Lewis, who is a British author and lecturer in Oxford and Cambridge University, said the following. Could come. Yes, here we are. If there lurks in most modern minds the notion that to desire our own good and earnestly to hope for the enjoyment of it is a bad thing, I submit that this notion has crept in from Kant and the Stoic and is no part of the Christian faith. Actually, Lewis became a Christian at the age of 33. Before that, he was an atheist. And interestingly, as an atheist, the biggest challenge for him was the existence of happiness. If God doesn't exist, how can we explain the existence of happiness? So many people think that Christians have very boring life and that atheists can enjoy life, have the most reason to enjoy life, but is it actually true? Think about it for a moment. Imagine we are in a totally different world. So in our world, evolution don't need happiness in order to work. For instance, pleasure works to a mean to encourage us to reproduce. But evolution could have gone a totally different direction. So imagine another world now, where we are encouraged to reproduce not by joy and pleasure, but by pain. That would be weird, isn't it? So you don't have sex for more than 5 days, bim, stomachache. You don't have sex for 2 days more, bim, headache. And the only way out, the only cure is to have sex. It would have been horrible, wouldn't it? At least we wouldn't have heard the excuse, sorry, love, not tonight, I have a headache. But anyway, pain would have been a very effective way to make us reproduce. Pleasure is just unnecessary in the sight of evolution. And so are many other things. Beauty, useless. Laughter, useless. Joy, useless. All these things are just random in the sight of evolution, but they are deeply precious in the sight of God. Actually, Christians should be the ones enjoying the most their happy moment, because they know that all these useless things are not just random result of evolution, but the decision of an intentional God who placed this thing in the world for the joy of his children, for our joy, for our fun, for our happiness. And enjoying life is not a fatalist way of making the most of our misery in this purposeless, aimless life. Enjoying life and creation is fulfilling one of our purpose as human beings. The Apostle Paul wrote a letter to a church in which some believers were trying to convince others to remain single and to not enjoy certain kind of meat because they were considered as ungodly. And he answered this. He said, everything God created is good, everything being sex inside marriage and this kind of meat. And nothing is to be rejected if it's received with thanksgiving. But a false conception of what it is to be a Christian is not the only thing that would steal our happiness. Sometimes it's the very circumstances of life. Life is not always fun in the sun. Happiness, we want it to last longer than holidays, but holidays comes to an end. Where lasting happiness can be found? That's the topic of tonight. Actually, the Bible speaks a lot about happiness, but it uses the word blessedness. So blessedness could sound a little bit too religious to us sometimes, but actually it has the meaning of welfare, peace, fulfillment, in other words, happiness. And the Bible uses the word blessedness again and again, many, many times. And one place where we can read this, I invite Oli to come, in the Bible, is in the prophet Jeremiah. in the Old Testament. And in Jeremiah 17, he uses this word blessed. So Jeremiah 17, verse 7 to 9.
But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in the year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it?
Thank you. This imagery speaks a lot to me because actually my whole family works with plants. They have a family business where they grow and sell plants, hundreds and hundreds of plants. And for them, water is a massive issue. So when everyone is happy because the summer is coming, my dad is stressing out. Because if the water system goes down, he may lose just years and years of work in just a few days. Why? Because his trees are not next to a stream of water, but are planted in pot. So this passage says that the person who trusts in the Lord is like a tree, but not like my father's tree, but a tree that is planted next to a stream of water. So here is the point that the Bible passage makes. We usually look for happiness in circumstances. We wait for something to make us happy. Like a tree who is relying only on the rain because his roots has nowhere to reach. But the Bible says that if we do that, we're gonna screw up, because real happiness is found where our roots are. Lasting happiness does not and never consist in what happens to us, but in what we are and what we truly rely on. Well, it may sound obvious, but yet we are very, very often like trees that are not planted by a stream. I don't know if it ever occurred to you to see people that seems to have it all. They have everything to be happy, but for some reason they're not. It can be because of horrible circumstances we don't know about, but sometimes it's just little simple, trivial things that can steal our happiness. Like one difficult discussion with our boss, or one little frustration, one bad deal we sold, one goal scored in the wrong team, 1 pound more on the scale when we are trying to lose weight. Very little things can steal our happiness. In order to find lasting happiness that doesn't depend on circumstances, we must stop trusting on what comes from the outside. Stop following our own heart, the Bible passage says. The heart is deceitful. Who can understand it? It's deceitful and it's beyond cure. The heart is where our desire lies, where our will lies. Our desires are deceitful. We think we know that what we need to be happy. We think, oh, I need that and I will be happy. I need that and I will be happy. But actually, it doesn't make us happy because we don't truly know what we need. So the Bible recommends us to trust on God for our lasting happiness. But actually, I think we should come to the same conclusion with our reasoning. Just think about it for a moment. We are looking for lasting happiness on one side, but we are not lasting creature. We don't have lasting desires, and our circumstances are not lasting. What is lasting? The only thing that is lasting is God. We should stop looking somewhere else. And if we take God's perspective for a moment, it also makes sense. Imagine, you created the world and humanity. You did it with great, great care. And you appreciate the result very, very much. So what would you do? Would you just disappear from their life and never speak to humanity again? It would be like a young couple building their home and decorating it perfectly so it may fit themselves and then never living in it. That wouldn't make sense. That would be absurd, because they made it perfectly suitable for themselves and for their desires. And in the same way, God created us perfectly for himself. And we are created to be perfectly fulfilled in God. Our lasting happiness is in him. So therefore, we should put God into the picture. But how do we do that? Let me show you 3 aspects in the 15 minutes I have left to tell you how can we put God into the picture. So first, we should experience happiness in relationship to God. Last summer, I did a camp with many rich kids coming from all across the world. It was very fun. And among them, there were the Filipinos, who were especially rich. So they had maids who took care of them, like 20 maids for one kid. And even their maids had maids, because they were so rich. And often we went in town with these kids, and they often said like, oh yeah, today, with my money, I'm gonna buy this and this and this. And I really wanted to go like, wait a second, with your money? Sorry, I don't remember seeing you at the embassy working 7 days a week. But anyway, go on. What are you going to buy with your parents' money? So it was a little frustrating the way these kids considered that they deserved their wealth, as if they became rich by their own effort. I guess they were so used to the wealth that they forgot about the provider behind the wealth. But actually, we are very similar to these kids. We forgot that we didn't create the nature that is around us. We forgot that we didn't grow our own cells in our mother's womb, that we didn't give birth to ourselves. We didn't create the neuron that today we use in order to reflect and to be able to work and sustain ourselves. We didn't create all that. And yet, we live as if we owe nothing to our Creator and Provider. The truth is everything, absolutely everything good comes from God, because He created everything, and He is the source of happiness. We can be thankful to Him, and I think in our time, many have discovered the benefits of gratitude and being thankful, like the movement of positive thinking and self-development. They speak about the healing power of gratitude. And I think that's very interesting. But there are some problems with this approach for them. And Michael Ramsden, a lecturer in law and economics, said the following: the great problem in the West is not that we have nothing to be thankful for, but no one to be thankful to. So you see, these people in this movement, they are expressing their joy to a universe that has no conscience, only a blind indifference. But it is very different for Christians. Behind our joy, there is a provider, someone who provided for this joy, and that makes the joy even bigger. Because, for instance, we can go like, wow, that's a nice summer. Wait a second, I know who created summer for my joy. Oh, wow, that's a nice time with my friend. Wait a second, I know the one who created friendship for my joy. How amazing is that? And I think us smiling to God, and God smiling to us, what an amazing, fulfilling experience, this relationship. We are called to live happiness in relationship to the Creator of happiness. Second, we should experience happiness in relationship to eternity. One thing that hinders us from happiness is not necessarily the lack of happy moments, but the reality that these moments don't last. And that can make us very sad. We can't really cope with endings. I often ask myself, why is that Mondays are always difficult after a sunny weekend? Why is that even the old and wise struggle to cope with the ending of a beautiful season in their life? Why is that we cannot handle death? Humanity has lived with death for centuries, but it still comes as outrageous and alien. And that is because death is foreign to us. endings are foreign to us. We were created in the context of eternity. Our destination is eternity. C.S. Lewis again speaks about the eternity and heaven and joy in eternity, and he says, "Our God, our Lord, finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drinks and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered to us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased." What is Lewis saying is that we should long for more, for eternity. And when we experience happiness, we should realize that happiness is just a foretaste of heaven, a little foretaste of a much greater joy that is to come. So we should fix our eyes on eternity when things go wrong, go right, but also when things go wrong. There is this wonderful Bible passage I love in the Bible in Romans 8, and it's again the Apostle Paul speaking to us. And he says the following: "I consider that our present suffering are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." This glory is the joy and the glory of heaven. And it's waiting for us. And this glory is so great, it's actually an insult to compare it to our present suffering, no matter how greatly we suffer. What a surprise to read that. In my French Bible version, it's written, if I translate, there is no common measure between our present suffering and the glory that is to come. No common measure. I love that phrase. Think about it. If we illustrate that, is there a common measure between my bike and a Ferrari? Well, yes. We can compare it with pounds. Some is more expensive than the other, obviously. I'll let you guess which one. But I could come with 500 of my bike and exchange it to a Ferrari, because there is a common measure. Is there a common measure, a unit of measure between the distance to the nearest beach and the distance to the sun? Well, yes, there is the miles, or the kilometer, if you are a rational person, sorry. So we can compare it with miles, and then transform that in light years, and then we can compare these two distances, which are very different. But is there a common measure, a common unit of measure between today's suffering and the glory that is to come? No! There is no common measure. It's impossible to compare them. There is no words. Our brains have no framework to compare these two things, because nothing can help us to comprehend the greatness and the joy that we will experiment in heaven. So let's keep our eyes on eternity when things goes right and when things goes wrong. And lastly, but surely not least, we should enjoy God himself. Well, let me tell you a story. When I was a young adult, well, I'm still a young adult, but when I was a younger adult, once my mom told me, "Elisa, you really treat this home like a hotel." Thank you. What I heard was, "Elisa, you should do more the laundry, the dishes, you should cook more and stuff." But it's not what she meant. She was very happy to provide for all these things. And actually, she still is, because I still live with my parents. Shame on me. But what she meant, what my mom truly meant was, "I'm desperate to spend some time with you as mother and daughter, and not only as provider and receiver." And really, that is the same for God. He provides joyfully for our needs and for our happiness. But we are so concerned about our happiness that we forget about God. We forgot about God. Let's listen to a pastor who speaks very well on happiness, and he's also a New York Times bestseller author, Tim Keller. And he says the following on happiness. This is the fundamental bias of our soul. If you seek happiness, it will always escape you, always elude you, always. If you make a happy marriage, a happy career, your number one priority, you will never have it. Because you will stress far too much over it. The less you are concerned about your happiness, and the more you are concerned about God, the happier you get. Now, we can be very tempted to think, okay, I don't really care about God, but if I need God to be happy, I can make an effort. And then if that doesn't work, then I stop being interested in God. Well, actually, that doesn't work. Because if God exists, our first reason to come to him should be he created us. He created everything, and in that sense, he owns us. He owns you. And coming to him is actually the most natural thing to do. In him is very much the place where we can be truly ourselves. It's our destiny. Because we were created to be fully happy in God. And any other way will lead us outside of lasting happiness. Therefore, the only way to come to God is not to be happy. It's not by looking for happiness, but it's coming to God with no condition, any condition, just being truly eager to know him personally. Let me share one last experience I had, a discussion I had with a friend from my psychology class. She was super upset with Christianity. And at some point in the discussion, she asked me, what is hell? Oof, good question. I answer, hell is life without God. So she looked at me and she says, well, today I live without God and I'm a fairly happy person. So why should I be afraid of hell? Well, at that time I thought she made a point. But actually that was without considering that in this present time, God is sending his gifts to us. He's sending happiness to us, believers and non-believers, all of us. But that will not be the case anymore in hell. Hell is total separation from God, from himself, and from his gift of happiness. Actually, I think behind my friend's question, there is something more. She is asking, how can I get the best deal? How may I have the maximum of happiness with the minimum of effort? Enjoying God's gift without making the effort of searching for God. Well, actually, the sad thing is, it's actually the worst deal ever, because, as I said, God is the source of happiness. And the other very sad thing about this attitude, it's that it makes us guilty of a terrible offense to our Creator, who immensely loves us. If we enjoy God's gift with no desire of knowing him, we are a little like employee working just for the money, or grandchild visiting just for the cake, or lover coming just for sex. How horrible is that? How does God feel when we enjoy his gifts, but we don't want to know him? None of us like to be appreciated only for what we give and not for what we are. It's an awful, awful feeling of being used. We don't make that offense to our parents without feeling guilty. So why are we so prompt to make that offense to the great Almighty God of the universe carelessly? But actually, it's possible that the reason why sometimes we are not so much interested to know God is because we have the wrong representation of who he is. Maybe we may see God as distant or boring or even angry against us. So the question is, and that's my final question, what is the best way to know God then? I think it's Jesus at the cross. Jesus at the cross shows God's magnificent love towards us. We were separated from God, unable to know Him, not even willing to know Him, separated from God's perfection by our impurity. But Jesus paid the price of guilt. All our wrongdoing, all our mistakes, He paid the price. And He didn't do it only for honest, nice people who loved Him, but for everyone. Him, whom we have despised by receiving His gift without caring about Him, using His creation for our own benefits without caring about Him. Him, the one we rejected, actually paid the price at the cross for all our guilt, so we may be having a relationship with Him. Isn't that staggering? That's the God I'm speaking about. That's the God I wish everyone could know. Not that God who is a killjoy, but a God that created joy. Not a God who makes us pay for our selfishness, but a God that paid for our selfishness Himself. Not a distant Father, but a loving Father. Well, I guess there may be different reaction to what I just said. I guess for some of you it may sound like a lot of rubbish and you don't want anything to do with God. Well, if that's your case, thank you for listening to me. But let me just ask this. Are you sure that the God you are rejecting is actually the God of the Bible? Is actually the God we spoke about tonight? May I encourage you to look further into this and not to rely only on what I've just told, but to look into that self by yourself? Why not read the Bible, for instance? Well, I guess there are other kind of reaction here. People who are interested, but not fully convinced and would like to know more. Well, the good thing is that the Lansdowne family is here for you, happy to talk more about this with you, and is willing to be with you in that journey. Actually, in the hall, just in the door over there, there is a hall, and there is a welcome point with several books. I really encourage to look into this. So there is Jesus for Skeptics, for people who are very skeptical about all this thing. You can have a look, maybe for yourself or for someone you know. Another book, What It's All About, very short, very direct. And finally, a booklet written by our dear Michael Green, for people who want to make a commitment and to know what it's all about to make this commitment. But finally, there may be someone here tonight who is very, very keen on knowing Jesus. You may not be fully convinced, not 100% convinced. It's normal. I wasn't when I became a Christian. And if not 100% of the Bible is appealing to you, it's normal. It's because it's foreign. Well, I think a dish coming from a country we have never heard is not always appealing, especially if we don't know the ingredients and we can't make the difference between a vegetable and meat. So it may not be appealing at first sight, and maybe it can be the same for you with Christianity. But what do we do with a meal we don't know? We taste it, we try. So I really encourage you to look into this more. Yeah, I think if Christianity was 100% appealing to you, it wouldn't be Christianity. It would just be your desire, your life made into a religion. So my final word will be, at any stage you are, I say, come and taste that the Lord is good. Come and taste that He is the Lord of happiness, and come to Him. So thank you for listening tonight. It was a pleasure to have you. And do have a look at the books at the welcome point. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Elisa. That was really helpful. But you've given us so much to think about. And although this is the end of this part of the event, there's so much more happening, because there are mocktails waiting for you guys, which is non-alcoholic cocktails. So if you go through those doors around the back, there's drinks waiting for you. And we really encourage you to discuss what you heard. If there's anything that intrigued you, if there's anything that you want to talk about, I mean, Elise is really happy to speak to you. And us as well here, as the MOA team, we're really happy to chat to you more about this. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if you found this event this evening interesting, I found it really interesting. So I've been Christian for a long time, but again, Elisa, you just touched my heart so deeply. Next Sunday at the same time, 6:30, in this building, we'll have another event. We believe that the truth of Jesus Christ has something to say on every aspect of our life. And next Sunday, we'll speak about on mental health. So we'll discuss how to respond on this issue from the distinctively Christian and biblical perspective. And if you want to know more about the church, if you want to know what we do and what's happening here, you're welcome to take the booklets that are on the welcome point near the entrance. Yeah, that's all, I guess.
Thank you very much for coming. Mocktails are waiting for you. Goodbye.
Yeah.